Hi campers, it's Loy, and this is CLO. So first thing I want to do is just kind of take you on a test drive of the screen. And to do that, what we're going to do, I'm going to show you the screens. We're going to load up a mannequin, and then we're going to load up a t-shirt, and then we're going to change it into a nightdress. Just for fun. Okay? So this is the first in this sequence of videos. And what I want to do is just take you on a tour of the screen. It's going to be a very brief tour because there are a lot of things on this screen that we are just not going to get to. This is a one semester class. We're getting you used to CLO. Some of you will use a lot of the things on here. Some of you will use fewer things, and that's okay, as long as you can get the job done. All right? So let's do a test drive of the screen. First, we'll start with the file menu. So the file menu up at the top, I almost never use. Almost never use it. I use the file menu when I want to save my project. File, save project. Okay. I use the edit button when I want to edit, undo. Edit, undo is still my best friend. Very much best friend. For the most part, though, I'm really not going to mess a whole lot with that menu up there unless I'm starting a project or stopping a project. In between, all of my attention is focused down here on these two big gray boxes. So let's look at these big gray boxes. The one on the left, the box on the left is your 3D window. Okay, you see it's got a floor here. Okay, that's the 3D window. That's where your mannequin shows up and you can look at it and edit it in 3D. The right-hand window is your 2D pattern window. So if you've ever sewn from a flat pattern, it's like you're looking down at the table, and here are all the things on the table. Okay? And then there are all the buttons. Oh, so many buttons. Okay? And you think, why do they have buttons over here and they have buttons over here? Like, why do we need the buttons all over the place? There's a reason for that. The buttons on the left are buttons that go with the 3D window. So these are all the tools you can use in the 3D window. And if you're looking to do something over here, the button's going to be on the left. These are all the buttons that go with the 2D window. So if you're looking to edit something over here in the pattern, you're looking for the buttons on the right. Okay? That's where we're going to spend the majority of our time, just between these two windows and these two sets of buttons. And again, we're not going to use all the buttons. We're going to use some of the buttons. Okay? All right. I'm going to just very briefly mention this area over here because if I didn't, you'd wonder what it is. This is the panel window, the object window. And if you remember, in Photoshop, you could click on something, left click on something to select it, and you would look over in the right-hand side, and you'd be able to see properties of it, like what color it was, or whether it was how much transparent it was, and what layer it's on, and all those kinds of things. The same thing is true in CLO. If I click on an object in CLO, the properties of that object will show up in the bottom right-hand corner. It's going to change constantly, and I'm going to ignore it unless there's something I specifically want to do with it. Okay? Most of our attention, 2D window, 3D window. All right? So just so that we can do some navigation, I'm going to load up a mannequin and a garment to show you what that looks like. Okay? There's a variety of ways that you can get this done. There's probably 6 ways to do any one thing in CLO. I'm going to show you the simplest. The simplest way is to go right up here, top right corner. Look at this little icon here. This is the CLO library. When I click on the CLO library, it opens this window. This is a window full of assets that are predefined by the people who publish CLO that you can use for free. Okay, so they're sort of pre-built in. It's like when you go in Photoshop and there are preset fonts and preset shapes that you can use. These are the preset garments you can use. We'll click on Avatar. CLO mostly calls its mannequins avatars. There are actual mannequins in here. They have no faces. They're gray. They're kind of creepy. But they're in here. Most of us will use the more realistic looking, baby, female, kid male avatars. Okay, and then there's some other weird things. We won't worry too much about them. If you would prefer to work with the mannequin, knock yourself out. Work with the mannequin. Just make sure you're not working with a kid one. This is a kid mannequin. I can tell by the proportions. There's a male, there's a female. Okay. There are some other assets in here. I'm just going to briefly show you where they are. We'll get back to them later, but we've got some fabrics in here, okay? Some different fabrics that we can use. I'm just scrolling through these fabrics. There are some trims in here that we can use, okay? So for example, draw cord, puckering stitches. Let's go to ribbons because ribbons are easy to see. Different ribbons, right? Okay, and there are some stages. So when you're done, you can put your mannequin on a stage. All right. What were we doing? Oh, yes, we were putting up a mannequin and a garment. So I'm going to go to Avatar. I'm going to go to the female mannequin set, and I'm going to pick on Yuna. I like picking on Yuna. She's a nice, simple avatar. Okay, so this is Yuna. To get Yuna loaded up into my design space, I am going to simply double-click on her avatar. And I'm going to wait. There she is. Depending on the speed of your computer, it may take a while to load Yuna, so just be patient. Let it load. Okay, but there's Yuna, and she's wearing a lovely set of panties and some chicken cutlets for us. Then I'm going to go up to my garment. So let's put an actual shirt on her. Okay, I could put a dress on her, but we're going to put a shirt on her for purposes here. This is a raglan half sleeve with princess seaming. So you see the seams go all the way to the bottom. And this is a raglan with seaming down to the bottom of the arm, down to the arm side. I do not want either of those t-shirts. I want the plain crew neck with the regular shoulder sleeves. I'm going to use that one because that is the closest to the seaming of the finished garment that I want to work with. Again, to get this garment into my sewing space, I'm just going to double click on it and give it a minute, and there it is. Yes, it looks like she's swimming in it. It's okay. All right. So now I'm done with my library. I'm going to close the library so I can see what I'm doing, and I can see on the left I have a mannequin. It has a shirt on, and over on the right I have a pattern or a set of pattern pieces. Okay. And very simple movement and motion. Let's talk about very simple movement and motion. The first thing I want to do is get this t-shirt to adjust to the mannequin. Okay, that's not where I want it sitting. What I'm going to do in close, I'm just going to turn on gravity. That's this button here. It's a down arrow. When you mouse over it, it's light blue, and when gravity is on, it's always light blue. Most of the time in CLO, we work with gravity off. And the reason we do that is because it's much harder on the computer. It makes it much slower if you're trying to work with gravity on. So if you're ever working in CLO and it seems like, oh, it's dragging and it's not updating and it's taking forever, just check and make sure you haven't left gravity on. Okay? All right, so I'm going to click and turn gravity on. Ready? Click. There, gravity is on. So now you see the arrow pointing down. This arrow pointing down is blue, and my cursor has changed. I have a little pinchy hand, and yeah, I can pinch, and I can drag that garment around. Oh, yes. Okay, let's straighten this up a little bit. Poor Yuna. Okay. But gravity is now currently on, and so this garment behaves in the way that it would if it was made of your basic fabric, which is a basic cotton fabric. Okay? I will click on the gravity tool again to turn gravity off. You notice nothing major happened. It's because turning gravity off isn't going to make my garment like pop back out again. The garment's going to stay exactly where it was, and I'll work on it, and when I want to see it adjusted again, I'll just turn gravity back on. Okay? All right. I've got a mannequin. I've got a garment. Let's talk about how we look at that garment. Okay, so right now I'm looking at Yuna's front. Okay, here's the only command that works in the 3D window that does not work in the 2D window. The twirl command. So we're going to make Una twirl. The way we make her twirl is to right-click and drag. So if I right-click, you'll notice my cursor changes. I'm holding down that right mouse button, and I get the round tool, and I can drag to the left, and I can drag to the right, and I can drag up, and I can drag down. Right? So we're going to make Una just give us like a 3/4 look. I like that 3/4 look. And it's just holding down the right mouse button and dragging her where you want her. Okay. Now, she's no longer centered in my frame. I'd like her to be centered in my frame. How do I move her without changing the direction that she's facing? That is an odd click for most software, but it's extremely helpful for CLO, and it is the mouse wheel click. So I'm going to hold down the mouse wheel. Notice my cursor changes again, and I'm going to drag. And as I'm dragging it around, okay, dragging that mouse wheel with the mouse wheel held down, dragging the mouse around is going to move Una so I can center her again. All right? That same command works over the 2D window. So if I hold down the mouse wheel in the 2D window and I drag around, I can drag this section around until it's centered on the area I want to see. Okay? And that's how we drag things around without changing their aspect ratio or their directionality. Okay, finally zooming in. Let's zoom in on Una a little bit. And to do that, I scroll my mouse wheel. Let's scroll in, over here, scroll in, point at the 3D window and roll that wheel and you'll zoom in and out. Point at the 2D window and roll the wheel, you'll zoom in and out. Okay? And then if I hold the mouse button down or mouse wheel down and drag, there she is. There she is. Now I'm ready to work on this pattern. Right? So, again, right click and drag to spin her around, wheel click and drag to move her around, wheel click and drag to move the pattern around, okay, wheel in and out to zoom in or out on the pattern. And that's how you move around and get to the things you want to get to. Okay, the last piece, now that we know how to move around, and you can pause this and go ahead and try and move around a little bit. But the last piece is how do we edit that pattern? I'm going to show you two ways of editing the pattern. One way in the 3D window and one way in the 2D window. Okay? In the 3D window, we're looking for a tool called the Style Line tool. It's this one right here. Okay, it's what? From Gravity 1, 2, 3, drop down, Edit Style Line. If you hold the mouse down too long on Edit Style Line, you'll get a pop-up window, just like you did in Photoshop. So just click on Edit Style Line. And when I click on Edit Style Line, give it a minute, and then whoop, look what happened. I've got all of these points, black points and black edit lines showing up in the 2D window, and I've got a different cursor in the 3D window, and if I'm pointing at the garment, it's turning blue. Okay, what do I do with this? Well, we're going to select the garment. Remember, select is left click. Click, and I've selected it. Oh, look at all these lines I have. I'm going to right click and drag and button click and drag until I can see what I'm doing here. Whoops. There we go. Right click. There you are, Una. Okay. What was I saying I wanted to do with this? Oh yeah, I wanted to turn it into a night dress. So let's grab this center point. I will left click and drag it down. Whoop. There it is. And now she has a flap on the front of her t-shirt. You'll notice in the 2D window that the 2D pattern mirrored what I did in the 3D window. The front piece of the garment angled down. And you notice that it perfectly aligns the curve. So I don't have to worry about what that curve exactly should look like. This curve on my 3D avatar matches this curve on my 2D pattern. All right, let's do the same thing on the back. So I'm going to right click and spin her around. And then I'm going to left click and drag on this point in the middle and drag it down. And look, now she's got a flap on the front and the back. Right click and drag to move her around. Yeah, doesn't look too bad. That doesn't look too bad. Let's check it out. Let's turn on gravity. So I will put gravity on. There we go. That's what it looks like with gravity on, gravity off. I think that looks pretty good. So far, so good. Right? So that's how we edit in the 3D window. You can grab whole seams and pull them. And you'll do some messy things with that. But it's very nice using the style line tool in the 3D window to grab points and drag them. Right? We can grab points and drag them. Okay? And if things look a little bit off in the 3D window, just turn gravity on and then turn it off again. And there we are. Now she's got a pajama bottom with some longer, about 3/4 length sleeves. All right, we're doing pretty well so far. Now, one thing I don't like about this particular pajama set, I can see the back. That seam there on the side, that seam seems like it should be much further back. Oh, the shoulders are too wide. This shoulder section here is too wide. Now, I can try and grab that on the style line, but you can see it's kind of tough to get in there to that point that I want to get to edit. So instead of using the style line tool, over here, I'm going to go back to the select tool. Just turn that on, so that way my style line tool is no longer on. And we're going to do some editing over in there in the 2D window, because in the 2D window it's very easy to get to the point I want to get to. It's right there. Okay? In the 2D pattern window, I'm going to use the Edit Pattern tool. From the top, we've got Transform Pattern, which is basically Select Pattern, and then we've got Edit Pattern is right underneath it. If you long click on it, you'll get this big menu. It's okay. Just select Edit Pattern. All right. What do I want to do here? Well, I want to bring this point in, that's for sure. So let's zoom in on those points there. And I want to take this point and I want to bring it in a little bit. So I'm clicking and dragging, just left click and drag. I'm going to bring this point in a little bit, left click and drag. All right, that looks pretty good. I've got a little bit of adjustment there. You notice that the adjustment happened on the avatar and again as well, because this pattern and this pattern are joined. They are the same pattern. And you notice these kind of funky blue lines. Let's zoom in a little bit so you can see those a little bit better. You see those funky blue lines? That's just indicating that those two seams are sewn, or supposed to be sewn. Because I've pulled them apart by making them smaller over here, there's a gap, but they're still sewn together. Well, I can fix that very easily. Let's go turn gravity on. Gravity on. Whoop, now they're sewn together. Gravity off so I can work. And how does she look now? She's looking better. She's looking a bit better. I probably want to adjust that some more, but that gives you some idea of what you can do in the 2D and 3D window. And in both of those cases, it's just click and drag. So let's say over here in the 2D window, let's say I wanted to take this point. That's the point here where the front and back seams meet up. Let's say I want to lower that a bit. I can do that in the 2D window. Click and drag down. Okay, now you notice the front is down and the back is not. That could be a problem. So I can click the back, click and drag down. Watch what happens. When I get to a certain level, you see that pink line that shows up? There it is. That pink line that shows up means those two are now at the same level. So if I want them to match, I'll let go right there. And there they are. They match. Right? Let's double check it. Gravity on, gravity off. Looks good to me. And she has a pair of pajamas. Ta-da! There's our Una pair of pajamas example. All right, so hopefully that helps you understand what have we done. We have identified the 3D window, the 2D window. We've opened the asset library, and we've opened up an avatar or a mannequin and put a garment on it. We have seen how to manipulate that avatar and that garment. We can zoom in and we can zoom out. We can drag things around. Rotate, right click and drag, move things around, wheel click and drag, and then zoom in and out using the wheel. Okay? So far so good. Let's save our hard work. We will do a file and save project. And it's going to ask me where do I want to save my project, and I will call it Una T-shirt. Let's call it pajamas. Pajama top. Okay. Be careful of where you save things. Okay. I'm saving things right here in my downloads folder. If you want to save them in your OneDrive, you're going to have to figure out how to get to it over here, or you can save it on your flash drive. But just be careful where you save it. All right. And so I am saving a PRZ file, a ZPRJ file. The ZPRJ file is the original CLO file. That is the file that you will submit for assignments. Okay. You will also likely do a screenshot of what it looks like on screen so that you can put it in the discussion boards. But the ZPRJ file is the entire CLO project file that you will save and turn in for your assignments. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, go back, rewind, listen a couple of times, and we'll go over it in class. I'll be right there the first time you're working on it.